You know, when people hear the phrase, the woman who can walk away controls everything, they sometimes mistake it for being harsh or emotionally shut off. But I want to be really clear. This isn't about playing games or pretending not to care. It's about a different kind of strength. One that's rooted not in detachment from love, but in attachment to yourself. The woman who can walk away isn't emotionless. She feels deeply. She wants connection. But she never lets her desire for someone else override her value for herself. She doesn't let her emotions hold her hostage. She knows that loving someone doesn't mean surrendering her standards, and it doesn't mean sacrificing her peace. That kind of woman is powerful not because she's controlling, but because she's in control of her life, her energy, her boundaries. See, most people think control in relationships comes from trying to manage the other person, what they say, what they do, how they feel about us. But that's not real control. That's insecurity wearing a costume. Real control is internal. It's knowing that no matter what someone else does, you'll be okay. That you're not relying on someone else to complete you. You're choosing them to complement you. And here's the shift. When you don't need someone to choose you, that's when you become the most powerful choice. Because you're no longer coming from desperation, you're coming from discernment. Think about it. How many people stay in relationships long past the point they know it's right for them? They stay because they're scared they won't find better, scared they'll be alone, scared they're asking for too much. And when fear drives your decisions, you start compromising your standards. You start shrinking yourself. You start begging for breadcrumbs and calling it love. But the woman who can walk away doesn't do that. Not because it's easy, but because she's trained herself to value peace over chaos, self-worth over validation, long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. And this isn't about giving ultimatums or threatening to leave every time someone messes up. It's much more subtle and more powerful than that. It's the quiet confidence of knowing, if this doesn't honor me, I'll let it go. That kind of energy, it changes the game. Because the moment someone senses that you can walk, not because you don't care, but because you do care deeply about yourself, it creates a shift. It sets a standard. Suddenly, you're not the one waiting for a text, overanalyzing their tone, or trying to fix everything to make it work. You're not trying to earn your place in someone's life. You're simply watching to see if they're worthy of a place in yours. There's a difference between attachment and addiction. One nurtures you, the other drains you. And the woman who can walk away knows the difference. She knows when love starts to cost her her joy, her dignity, or her peace. It's too expensive. Now, let me be real. Walking away doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak, like disappointment, like letting go of a dream. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing not to answer the text you want to answer because you know it'll lead you back into a cycle you've outgrown. Sometimes it's waking up alone instead of waking up next to someone who makes you feel lonelier than being alone ever could. I get it. It's not always easy. But every time you choose yourself, you're reconditioning your mind. You're saying, I am enough. I am worth choosing. And if someone else can't see that, it doesn't mean I need to try harder. It means I need to walk away. And here's the kicker. People feel that energy. They feel when you're in a place of wholeness versus a place of lack. When you have the ability to walk, you're not negotiating from fear, standing in truth. And that makes people show up differently around you. Some will rise to meet you, others will fall away. And that's okay. You're not for everyone. And you are never meant to be. You're not meant to be chosen by someone who needs you to shrink first. You're meant to be chosen as you are. So when I say the woman who can walk away controls everything, I don't mean she manipulates the game. I mean, she transcends it. She lives on a different level. Because when you know your worth, you stop chasing what costs you it. The woman who can walk away doesn't just know her power, she lives it. And that's what makes her unforgettable. When you hear someone say the woman who can walk away controls everything, it's easy to assume it's all about playing hard to get. But it's so much deeper than that. It's about something far more powerful. It's standards. See, standards aren't about being difficult. They're not about being bossy or rigid or having some crazy checklist no one can live up to. Standards are about your worth. They're about the way you teach the world how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. A woman with high standards isn't out here trying to control anyone. She's not controlling, she's clear. She knows what she values. She knows what she's not willing to compromise on. And she isn't afraid to stand in that truth, even if it means being alone for a while. Now, here's the truth most people won't tell you. High standards don't scare off the right people. They scare off the wrong ones. And that's exactly what they're supposed to do. If someone disappears because you wouldn't settle for bare minimum effort, you haven't lost anything. You've saved your time. You've spared your heart. You've created space for someone better. That's not rejection, that's clarity. Too often we confuse being chosen with being valued. So we start shrinking. We lower the bar just to keep someone around. We tell ourselves, maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe I need to be more flexible. Maybe if I just hang on a little longer, they'll come around. But deep down, we know we're bargaining with our self-respect. The woman who can walk away doesn't negotiate her non-negotiables. That's what makes her powerful. Not because she's threatening to leave, but because she doesn't need to stay where love isn't being honored. Think about it. We live in a world where everyone is afraid of being alone. So what do most people do? They settle, they cling, they compromise over and over again until they don't even recognize themselves. But the woman who can walk away, she doesn't fear solitude. She chooses it over settling. And that's where the real control is. Because the minute you're willing to lose someone who isn't showing up for you, you stop being afraid. You start being free. And in that freedom, you become magnetic. See, there's a reason people are drawn to women who know their worth. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's the way she holds herself. It's the peace she has from knowing she doesn't have to chase love. She is love. She brings value into every space she enters. So she doesn't waste energy trying to convince anyone of her worth. And the moment you stop trying to convince someone to see you, the moment you start living like someone already worthy, the game changes. You stop investing in potential. You start responding to patterns. You start over-explaining your needs. You start expecting them to be met. Not through entitlement, but through self-respect. When you have standards, you're not saying you need to be perfect. You're saying you need to be intentional. You need to be consistent. You need to meet me where I am, or I'm willing to walk away with love, with peace, but with certainty. You don't do it to manipulate. You do it because your peace is more important than someone's promise. You do it because energy speaks louder than words. You do it because your time is sacred, and you don't waste sacred things on temporary people. So many of us think we need to do more to be chosen. But the truth is, when you know your value, you start doing less. Less chasing, less explaining, less tolerating, because you realize someone who actually values you won't need to be convinced. They'll recognize you. The irony is, the woman who can walk away doesn't actually want to. She's not looking for a reason to leave. She wants to stay. She wants connection. She wants to love fully and deeply. But she's not willing to abandon herself in the process. And because she's willing to leave, if she's not being loved the right way, she ends up attracting the kind of person who is ready to love her that way. The kind of person who doesn't take her for granted, who steps up, who sees her clearly and says, I'm not letting this one go. That's why the woman who can walk away controls everything. Most people think love is about being available, always there, always giving, always present. But what they forget is that availability without value is just noise. When something is always there, always giving and never stepping back, it starts to get taken for granted. Not because people are bad, but because that's human nature. We value what we could lose. And that's why the woman who can walk away, who knows when to lean back instead of always leaning in, who can say, this isn't enough for me, without raising her voice, she becomes the one everyone wants. When you carry the ability to walk away, you don't have to use it as a threat. It speaks for itself. That's the paradox. The woman who can say, I don't need this situation to define my worth, is the one who shifts the entire dynamic. She becomes scarce in a world full of people clinging desperately to things that aren't good for them. That scarcity creates value because we chase what we fear we could lose and we respect what doesn't need us to survive. You see, most people enter relationships like gamblers at a slot machine. They keep pulling the lever, hoping that this time something changes. But the woman who understands her value knows when to stop feeding a machine that's not paying out. She doesn't keep spinning her emotional energy on someone who isn't reciprocating. And when she steps back, she doesn't do it to punish or manipulate. She does it because she knows that her energy, her presence, her love, all of it is valuable. And you don't just give value to anyone who hasn't earned it. That's the kind of woman who doesn't chase validation. She doesn't stay just to prove she's lovable. She knows that her love is a gift and she's willing to reserve it for someone who understands that. And that kind of energy, that's rare. That's what makes someone turn their head and think, wait, I don't want to lose her. Not because she's playing games, but because she's living in alignment with her standards. It's not about being cold. It's not about being aloof or distant. It's about being clear. Clear on what you want, what you deserve, and what you're not willing to tolerate. And when you're clear, your energy becomes magnetic. You stop sending mixed signals. You stop accepting half effort. You stop tolerating potential and start honoring reality. That's the switch. That's when everything changes. And here's what's interesting. The second you stop chasing someone's attention, you create the space for their desire to grow. But even more importantly, you create the space for your peace to return. Because that peace is where your power lives. Not in obsessing over someone's texts, not in overanalyzing every interaction, not in convincing someone to see your worth. Your power lives in knowing that your life continues beautifully, fully, unapologetically, with or without them. The moment you become willing to walk away, you stop negotiating with your self-worth. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. You stop overcompensating for what someone else lacks, and you start standing taller. Not because you're arrogant, but because you finally remembered who you are. And when you carry that energy, the energy of a woman who can walk away, you don't need to control anything. You already control everything because your presence becomes a choice, not a default. And the truth is, not everyone will rise to meet you when you walk in that power. Some will let you go. Some won't even notice. And that's okay. Because the woman who can walk away doesn't fear that. She trusts that the right person will recognize her value without needing to be chased, fixed, or convinced. And in the meantime, she's not waiting. She's growing, she's living, she's glowing. Because when you know you can walk away, you know you don't have to. You're not acting from fear. You're acting from strength. And that strength is what changes the game completely. She becomes the prize. You don't need to convince someone to love you the right way. That's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever learn. And yet, it's where so many people get stuck. They think if they can just say the right thing or prove their loyalty or show how much they care, then the other person will finally start treating them the way they deserve. But love doesn't work like that. Relationships aren't negotiations where one side pleads for what they need and the other finally gives in out of guilt or obligation. Real connection, genuine, mutual, respectful love doesn't require convincing. It requires alignment. What you have to understand is this: your energy teaches people how to treat you. Not your words, not your lectures, not the long texts explaining your worth or the late night phone calls hoping they'll understand. It's your energy, how you show up, what you tolerate, what you walk away from. That tells someone everything they need to know about how they can show up with you. See, when you tolerate inconsistency, you tell someone that your time isn't valuable. When you make excuses for someone's bad behavior, you communicate that you'll accept less than you deserve. When you keep giving chances to someone who doesn't make the effort to meet you halfway, your energy says, I'll stay as long as you give me just enough to hope. Now, don't mistake that for being weak. It's not weakness. It's fear. It's the fear that maybe this is the best you're going to get. That maybe love means being patient to the point of self-abandonment. That if you leave, you won't find anything better. But the truth is, every time you betray your own boundaries to keep someone in your life, you teach them that their comfort matters more than your dignity. Imagine for a moment what it feels like to be around someone who doesn't chase, doesn't cling, doesn't explain herself endlessly, but instead stands in her calm, unwavering value. She's kind, but clear. She's loving, but she won't settle. That woman teaches people how to love her, not through demands, but through her presence. Her energy speaks louder than any speech she could give. And that's what makes her unforgettable. When someone starts to notice that you're not afraid to lose them, it changes the dynamic, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're grounded in the reality that you are already whole. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to complement the life you've built, the self-respect you embody, the peace you refuse to give up for chaos masquerading as passion. This doesn't mean you never open up. It doesn't mean you close your heart or become guarded or cold. It means you stop begging to be chosen. You stop offering more than you receive, hoping it'll inspire someone to change. You stop tolerating patterns that leave you drained, anxious, or confused, and you start tolerating calm over chaos, consistency over potential, clarity over confusion. You want to change how someone treats you? Stop explaining and start demonstrating. Pull your energy back from what isn't feeding your soul. Let your absence be felt instead of making your presence too easy to misuse. Because when someone realizes you are capable of walking out of anger, but out of self-respect, that's when the power shifts. That's not manipulation. That's truth. And it's not about punishing anyone either. It's about alignment. If someone really wants to be with you, they'll rise. If they don't, they'll fall away. And that's a gift. That's clarity. You're not here to raise someone into loving you properly. You're here to meet someone who already does. So the next time you feel that urge to explain why you deserve better, take a step back. Ask yourself, does my energy match my stand? Am I showing up like someone who believes she is worthy of being loved fully, deeply, and consistently? Because if you are, you won't need to convince anyone. You'll either be met at your level or you'll walk away with your dignity intact, knowing that doing so created space for something greater. The woman who can walk away doesn't do it to prove a point. She does it because she doesn't need to prove anything at all. Walking away isn't losing, it's choosing. It's one of the most powerful decisions a woman can make. And yet, it's so often misunderstood. See, we've been conditioned to think that leaving means we failed, that if a relationship doesn't last, we somehow didn't try hard enough. But that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, walking away, when done from a place of clarity and self-respect, is one of the highest forms of self-love there is. Think about it. It's easy to stay. It's easy to keep hoping that someone will change, that things will improve, that love will somehow be enough to fix what's broken. We tell ourselves stories to justify the time we've invested. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I just need to be more patient. Maybe they're going through a phase. And in the process, we shrink, we bend, we compromise, not just on our standards, but on our peace, on our joy, on our essence. But the woman who can walk away sees clearly. She knows that love isn't just about how much you feel, it's about how you're treated. It's about how consistently someone shows up. It's about whether you feel safe, seen, and cherished. And if those things aren't there, she's willing to choose herself, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when every part of her wants to hold on. That's what most people don't understand. Walking away isn't emotionless. It's not cold. It's not done out of spite or ego. It's done out of alignment. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's saying, I love you, but I won't lose myself to keep you. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you embrace that mindset, you stop needing control, and that's when you actually have it. Not control over the other person, but over your own life. You stop trying to force outcomes. You stop auditioning for love. You stop negotiating your value. You just are. And that kind of presence is incredibly powerful. Because when someone knows you're willing to walk, not as a threat, but as a quiet truth, they show up differently. If they really care, they rise. They meet your energy. They realize that your love is a privilege, not a guarantee. But if they don't, well, then you've just saved yourself months, maybe years of trying to convince someone who was never really in it. See, we spend so much time trying to win people over. We think if we just do more, give more, prove more, they'll finally see our worth. But what we forget is that our worth doesn't increase because someone recognizes it. It's already there. The problem is never whether you're enough. The question is whether they're capable of seeing what's right in front of them. And if they're not, that's not your burden to carry. That's your cue to let go. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to stop waiting for someone else to catch up. It means you trust that better exists, that you won't die from heartbreak, but you can die a slow, emotional death by staying in places that don't nourish your soul. So many people ask, but what if I walk away and they never come back? And my answer is always the same. If they don't come back, they weren't meant to stay. And if they do, then it wasn't your walking away that pushed them away. It was the wake-up call they needed. Either way, you win because you're no longer living in fear. You're living in integrity. And that's where your true power lives. It's not about playing games. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about actually reaching that point where your self-respect overrides your attachment, where your standards are no longer negotiable, where you'd rather be alone than in a relationship that makes you feel lonely. And yes, it takes courage. It takes strength to walk when your heart is still holding on. It takes clarity to move forward when your mind keeps replaying the good moments. But over time, you start to realize something profound. Every time you choose yourself, life opens up for you. New doors appear, new people, new energy, new opportunities. They come rushing in because you made space for them. You can't receive what's meant for you if your hands are full of what's not. And that's the quiet magic of walking away. It's not the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one where you are the author, not just a character in someone else's narrative. So don't ever let anyone tell you that walking away is giving up. It's not. It's a declaration. A declaration that says, I am worthy, I am enough, and I won't settle for less than what honors me. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's power. That's control. And the woman who lives from that place controls everything. The ultimate control doesn't come from trying to make someone love you. It doesn't come from playing it cool, sending perfectly timed texts, or crafting some ideal version of yourself you think they'll like. The real power, the kind that changes everything, comes from freedom. And I'm not talking about the kind of freedom where you shut down, pretend you don't care, or live in a constant state of aloof detachment. I'm talking about the freedom that comes from genuinely knowing that you will be okay, with or without this person, because the woman who can walk away, she's already free. She's not waiting for someone to make her feel worthy. She's not basing her self-esteem on whether or not someone chooses her. She's already chosen herself. And that kind of freedom, emotional freedom, is magnetic. When you walk into a relationship from a place of security and self-worth, you don't need the relationship to work out to feel good about yourself. You want it, sure. You care, you love, you're in it, but you're not trapped by it. You're not afraid of the idea of it ending because you're not clinging to it as your only source of joy or validation. That changes everything. Because when you're free, you're not driven by fear. You're not bending your boundaries to keep someone. You're not tolerating mixed signals, emotional crumbs, or hot and cold behavior just to avoid being alone. You're not staying quiet when something hurts you because you're afraid speaking up might push them away. You're not performing for love. You're simply showing up as you are. And you're willing to walk if that's not enough for someone. That kind of presence makes people pay attention. It commands respect without demanding it. When someone senses you're free, not in an I don't care way, but in an I know who I am way, they realize that they're in the presence of someone with options, someone who chooses them but doesn't need them to feel whole. That's the woman who sets the tone in a relationship. That's the woman who doesn't get strung along, who doesn't get breadcrumbed, who doesn't chase, beg, or explain her worth to someone who refuses to see it, because she knows something really important. Love isn't proven by how long you wait around hoping someone gets it together. Love is proven in how you love yourself enough to walk away when it's clear they won't. Freedom isn't detachment from love, it's detachment from the outcome. You can love deeply and still walk away if the treatment isn't right. You can feel heartbroken and still know you made the right choice. That's the kind of strength people don't see coming. Because we are so often taught that the most loving thing we can do is stay patient, stay hopeful, stay giving. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is leave. You don't need to threaten someone with walking away. You don't need to say, if you don't change, I'll go. You don't need ultimatums. When you're genuinely free, they can feel it. They know that if they don't step up, you'll quietly step away. And they know you'll mean it. Not because you're trying to prove anything, not because you're playing games, but because you respect yourself too much to stay in something that no longer honors you. And when someone does step up, when they rise to meet you, when they match your energy, when they treat you with the care, attention, and love you deserve, you'll receive it fully with an open heart. Not from desperation, not from scarcity, but from choice. That's what freedom gives you. The ability to receive love without losing yourself in the process. The ability to let go of what isn't right without fear that it was your last chance. The ability to walk away not because you stopped caring, but because you cared about yourself enough to know this isn't where your story ends. So yes, the woman who can walk away controls everything, not because she controls other people, but because she controls herself. She controls her choices. She controls her energy. She doesn't chase approval. She gives herself permission. She doesn't fight to keep a seat at a table where she's not being fed. She simply gets up, walks out with grace, and trusts that there's another table waiting, one where she doesn't have to question her worth, and that changes everything.